So the occasion for a few questions. First question is asking how to deal with strong floods of sankhara. They make it hard to stay grounded. There's a lot of stress externally with situations with my kids where the identity of mom is involved. At times, trying to come up with ways to save my kids. How do I keep my ground in my own practice when that identity comes through? It seems almost biological. How to deal with strong floods of sankhara. So for those who are not familiar with this piece of language, sankhara, it can cover a number of things, but primarily it means this quality like of an energy that has an impulse to it, like getting activated, getting triggered. So an emotional sankhara, getting a lot of emotional energy rushing through with certain compulsive programs: fix, make, change, hold on, be good. You know, this is activating energy. This is sankhara. So when there's strong floods, makes it difficult to stay grounded. And the person feels themselves perhaps unable to maintain a clear focus or clear balance. These powerful energies moving through. A lot of stress, situations with my kids where the identity of mom is involved. And at times, trying to come up with ways to save my kids. How do I keep my ground in my own practice when that identity comes through? It seems almost biological. Well, it is biological, at least to a degree. I mean, that's what mothering's about. It's a biological condition which activates certain emotional programs. Otherwise, we wouldn't have survived, probably. Yeah, deep attention, a lot of care and concern, a lot of focus on the welfare of the little one. So that's there. Being a program switched on, the emotional floods, it tends to follow its program, which is to protect, cultivate, encourage, feed, nourish the offspring. Whether the offspring need it or want it or not. And sometimes this could go when the offspring is 45 years old and the mother is still having those same programs, those same attitudes. So it's not self, it's a program. And naturally anything that's intimate and becomes a pattern, a repeated program, is intimate, and particularly involves the emotions, seems like me. Feels like me, because all the energies run in that direction. So my energies, heart energy, are running that direction. One very much identifies, or is a strong identification with these heart energies, these sankharas, these emotional programs and patterns. And so that's not wrong, it's just what happens. So just understanding it as that rather than as a person. So then the identity comes forth of being the mother, which is, again, all part of the program. But so one has to sort of be aware of that mother and recognizing actually it's more like a program that affects everything. What the person gives attention to, and what they're interested in, and what their concerns are. So you witness this not as an identity, but as these various psychologies and inclinations. So you can, be aware of those, and they serve a purpose. So you just manage it as best you can. Because although it serves a purpose, the emotional program is fine. It's not necessarily always accurate, because it says things like to save my kids. That's a very powerful phrase. And of course, that's part of the program. The mother will give her life to save the children. And yet also recognize, do you save them? Save them from what? Suffering, aging, sickness, death? I don't think so. So the urge is there, but the program is not it's not accurate on the details. In a sense, well, they have to contemplate it and keep recognizing, what about these kids? You've got 2, maybe, or 3, how many you have. What actually happens for them? And what supports their growth into being autonomous? What supports their growth? Since you are subject to aging, sickness, death, what supports their growth when you're gone? To what extent there's a phase in which the mothering is very much necessary as a kind of biological fact. And it becomes more an emotional support and a modeling. And then it's got to change in accordance with the disposition of the children. So that's the learning process, isn't it? And you can kind of contemplate your identity changing, because it's still a relationship. And the relationship has to allow both parties to be changeable. And of course, with the children, as they're growing and changing, when do they need mother? When do they need space? When do they need intense care? Where do they need you to be step back a bit? So you have to work with that relationship. And there's a lot that can be learned about their identity. Identity is not a fixed thing. Shouldn't be a fixed thing. It's something that is relevant in accordance with the conditions that support it. So, identity of mother, well, there can be the need to be caring when care is needed, rather than a fixed identity whereby you see these 2, 3 people permanently as children who need your constant care. And that could be confining for them. Now, I don't know how old they are, but there's always a moderating relationship. And if we look into the, for example, the 4 Brahma Vihara, for qualities of goodwill, kindness, compassion, gladness, and equanimity. And sometimes the images, a set of images that are used to describe these are quite appropriate to contemplate. One is the mother, metta, goodwill. The mother is actually, feeding the child, so really right there, not bringing her energy, her body into the child's presence to suckle it, so forth. That's the first image, feeding. It's metta. And so mothers do that. At a certain point, they don't need to do that. The child is weaned, but still, they still have goodwill, but then it's also a sense of compassion, which means that the mother is watching over the child to make sure the child is only 3 years old, he could get hurt, so is watchful, keeping a vigilant eye to make sure they don't have accidents or burn themselves. Compassion. And that's also part of it. And then there's a time when the child is now 18 years old or so. They're quite strong and vigorous and learning things. And then as a parent, the mother's appreciative, glad. Oh, my child is now a young person. They're intelligent, they're creative, they have wit, they are strong, they are capable. I'm so glad. I'm appreciating their strength. There's a sense in which there's a lot more autonomy being granted. Allowing the person to express and take their own form and rejoice in it. And there's the last one is equanimity, whereby the child can move out, form their own life, not be living with the parent, and go through their own growth process, ups and downs, accidents and joys, and the parent remains accepting of all of it, equanimous, but no, doesn't mean indifferent. It just means they accept all the changes and are present, emotionally present, but not interfering unless asked. And so there's that growing spaciousness in the relationship, which is important to cultivate. My sense of that. Okay. So another question. In terms of cultivating qualities of the heart, are these qualities conditioned in the same way as intellectual abilities or knowledge, which are dependent on a functioning brain? Or if we cultivate physical strength, this will end when the body does. Do qualities of the heart, such as openness, stability, kindness, etc., carry on regardless of physical or mental condition? Or are they conditioned by the body or the mental faculties or anything else? So let's break it down very simply. Qualities of the heart, are they conditioned by qualities of intellect or qualities of physicality, such as health, health, capacity, vigor, so forth. Because these, as we recognize, the physical qualities can decline. They do decline with age or with sickness. Mental functioning brain qualities can also decline with sickness or with aging. So the heart qualities, are they dependent upon these bases? And the simple answer is it depends. They may start, like it's good to have some degree of intellectual capacity to be able to consider and reflect on the mind states. So you're not in a state of delirium or intoxicated. So enough clarity to know what's going on. So you're not delirious, intoxicated, psychotic. Because then the heart isn't able to relate to anything. And then physical qualities, well, it's good to have, if you're in extreme physical pain, it gets very challenging for the heart to be cultivated. So to some extent, they are at least initiated by supportive conditions, bodily and mental conditions. But increasingly, the notion is, or the practice is, to cultivate them so they're not dependent on the bodily or mental condition. That's what liberation is about. So even in decline and death, the heart can remain free. And that's the big project. And of course, it's what the Buddha exemplified in his last dying moments. In fact, in his dying moments, he was answering questions, and then going into deep samadhi, to jhana, as he passed away. So clearly the heart was quite capable of functioning, and even the mental faculties are capable of functioning while the body was breaking up. Now, what does condition the heart is karma. Means intentions and actions that we have participated in. So this is the most powerful conditioning force for the heart qualities: clarity, openness, stability, you name it, all of them. They are dependent on good karma, or good enough karma. Yeah. Ideally one's own, but most of us all rely upon the good karma of other people. In other words, the good friend, the wise teacher, their good heart qualities can nudge, nourish, bring forth our good qualities. And so to some extent it's dependent upon karma. If you have the good karma to associate with wise people, chances are your heart will develop. If you don't come into proximity with such beings or such teachings, chances are the heart won't develop. These are all potentials. It doesn't say it won't, it just says it's less likely. Yeah? If you've been, or if a person's been prone to committing acts of violence, deceit, and so forth, much less likely. It's a tougher journey, turn it round. But at the same time, it can be almost something that demands that one turn it round. You think, look, if I keep acting like this, I'm really going to be in a jam. I've really got to make a lot of effort to change. So, sometimes people who have been, committed lots of moral errors begin to see the error of their ways, and it gives them an incentive to change if you really get it. Yeah. And sometimes people who have not been involved in anything that evil or wicked just poot along and don't develop anything at all because there's no urgency to it. Fine, I'm fine, I'm okay. They don't develop because there's no fire, there's no impetus to do so. So sometimes, people develop because they've had tragic circumstances. You can't say you want people to have tragic circumstances, to have bereavement, loss, abuse, and so forth. You can't say you want it, but sometimes it can be something that a person really is desperate to bring around change. And so some conditions can be negative in a way, but the primary, so the suffering, if we say suffering, is the first noble truth. So that is, in a way, it's a support condition. It means we want to get out of this. We want to do something. We're motivated. Yet the really significant feature is there's got to be some quality of non-suffering, such as you suddenly hear the words of a master. You get it. You see it. You see a sign of truth. You see the sign of beauty of virtue or calm or liberation. in the presence of another. This is considered the one of the most significant supportive conditions for the heart, because we can suffer and think there's nothing you can do about it, just distract yourself. Or we could be experiencing some suffering and see someone who's not suffering or has been through that and has found a way with it, and we get this tremendous, what's called pasada, which means sort of faith, trust, and samvega, which means something like urgency. Samvega, which is like, there's a fire behind you that you're moving from, and there's a light in front of you you're moving towards. Those are the most potent conditions for the heart to be, shaped, impelled, aroused for what needs to be done. So, in some ways, the development of the heart does depend upon conditions, but the conditions it depends upon most fundamentally are heart conditions. The conditions that arouse urgency, the conditions that arouse faith, and the conditions that indicate there's an accessible path I can relate to, I can get hold of. Those are the conditions that support it. And one's karma, obviously, most of us, it's very mingled. There's good and there's bad, but there's enough there, enough good to know a good thing when you see it. To be clear enough, those with a little dust in their eyes, as the Buddha said. You've got a lot of dust, but it seems like a lot, but actually, you know a good thing when you see it, and you're right. And so that's in accordance with one's karmic potential, our inheritance. So some people get this quite early. When they're quite young, they begin to sense, no, this isn't right. I need more than this. This deal is not enough. I'm not satisfied with this. And some people get it through unfortunate circumstances. The marriage breaks up, or they have addiction problems, or bereavement, or violation, and look, this you've got to really pull yourself together and get going. But then there's the sign of something you can hold on to. Dhamma, teaching, good friend is considered to be, or the fundamental support condition is association with a person of integrity. That's considered to be the fundamental rock bottom condition for the arousal and the process of liberation. Because if you associate with people of integrity, you're going to get some good Dhamma somewhere or the other. When you get good Dhamma, you can pick it up. When you can pick it up and practice it, then you're starting to go. And those are the conditions that support it. And so then if that's possible, then in fact, things like physical problems are problems, but they're not insurmountable. The heart can rise above that. Let's see again. So a person has an issue, 17-year-old cat who is dying. There are days when she suffers greatly. She rejects the comfort medicine recommended by the vet. Question, cat wisdom? My Western conditioning says I should put her down to end her suffering. My Buddhist training suggests staying with the suffering and making her as comfortable as possible. Your thoughts? Person has an aged cat who is dying. Cat rejects the medicines the vet offers. The question is asking, should I have the cat put down because she seems to suffer a lot? But I got a feeling maybe I should, just make her as comfortable as possible, let nature take its course. I think that's what she's saying. Yeah, I think I would probably agree with you. Yeah, because we, ending other creatures' suffering. I mean, often it's our own suffering that we're trying to deal with, our suffering of seeing creatures in pain. uh, you know, mm, mm, you know. So we have people gave us a cat. And I don't recommend having pets at all because it's a fraught relationship on many levels. You know, the animal is kind of like, it's not an animal, it's a kind of, you know, it's a strange relationship. But we do sometimes get orphaned cat. And so the cat, last one we had, died. I think she had a tumor. And she should have, normally she'd have been put down, but the monks didn't want to do that. And they used to take it in turns. She was really in a bad shape, just kind of like an old rag, with a little box, and she just slumped down in this box, and one of her eyes was gone because the thing was in her brain. And they just kind of put homeopathic drops into the cat's eyes every 15 minutes, somebody looking after the cat, tending to it, and until she slipped away. And that was their response to it. It took a lot of attention, but that's what they did. Of course, in the wild, the cat wouldn't have got to that condition. The fox would have eaten it. So this is the problem when you take on responsibility for another creature's life. You, in a way, you take it out of the field in which it would normally exist, which nature would do what nature does. But we've kind of taken it out of that. We've made it a semi-human being, a surrogate human being. And then it gets really difficult because, as with human beings, you could keep them going much longer through artificial means than would occur if we were left to nature. And we want to do that for each other. And so when you're taking on a life of an animal, then you should consider this quite carefully. What will you be doing when the animal is in pain and dying? And can you look into your own heart, see, what are my responses? What's happening for me? Can I deal with those? Can I become more compassionate and equanimous? What's my level of intrusion, or what's my level of how much do I put into this process? I'd certainly suggest making the animal comfortable as possible. But if the animal's rejecting medicine, probably the animal's doing cats are pretty savvy. Then when they get around to dying, they generally decide, okay, enough eating, enough drinking. Often they just disappear and go and lie under a bush somewhere. They just shut it down. Most of our cats have done that. They just decide to pack up and they just stop. Had enough. So I think I would trust the cat personally and follow that line. What would be a sequence for a daily meditation practice? Sequence for a daily meditation practice. I would like to know the chanting for a lonely practice too, the 3 refuges. Well, I think sequence for a daily meditation practice. Well, I think it's good to begin and end the days at least with some meditation. So you begin the day with a sense of before the daily round gets going, sort of okay, freshen up, prepare yourself. So it's like, like washing yourself. You may begin the day with a wash, so you're freshened up for the day. Wash your body, also wash your mind, so it's in good condition. Bring it up. Remember, when meditating, we're trying to cultivate qualities such as resilience, patience, clarity, and so that's an important exercise, just like any other exercise, to get you in good shape. And so, you should, I think, recommend begin a day like that. Also end a day with some meditation, so you get a chance to review and recollect, what did you learn today, how are things going, is there something you need to learn from today that you need to put down or pick up or make more of or make less of. So wisely reflect. And also, is the day finished? Let it finish. If you're going to sleep, you should recollect that you might die in your sleep. So that you really ideally finish your business with the day at the end of the day. Yeah, and so I think that's an important thing to do. It's probably good from time to time to do retreats to keep to sort of top up and deepen and enrich your meditation practice, and that will generally bring you into contact with other people who practice or centers that practice, and that's all very strengthening, and it creates a sense of community and belonging and kind of a dialogue, and this is all very enriching if you can join in with other people. And the themes are generally to do with wisdom, embodiment, heart qualities, loving kindness, and so forth. Chanting for lonely practice, I suppose you mean solitary practice, 3 refuges. They're always good to determine, like a kind of orientation. This is what I'm about. Refuges, precepts. The little chanting book that we've given out, the qualities of Metta Sutta. So learn a few that you get familiar with that work for you. The 5 subjects for frequent recollection. I am of the nature to age, sicken, die. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will be separated from me. I am heir to my karma, born of my karma, and so forth. And so this gives you a sense of urgency and keeps the motivation going. So the chanting can be like daily reminders that help to take you to deeper places than just the flow of the media circumstances, with the current level of activities going on in global sphere that you're just an onlooker to. We do a lot of that, just on looking, things that really are not intimate, not connected to your own welfare. So that's always good to cultivate internal looking rather than external looking. Books and readings, well, what would you recommend? There's a range. Would you recommend yours or other authors? Well, the books I write work for me, otherwise I wouldn't write them. But whether they work for anybody else, I don't know. It's good to have a range of people who've got different voices, different angles. And generally, when you're looking at in this literature, there's a huge amount of literature. You should look at things like it's the person trying to promote themselves. You don't really want to do that. If you look at the outside of a book, it's all promoting how wonderful the author is. I think, about that. What's the gimmick? What's the advertisement here? Because what's the integrity of the person? You can't tell from the book immediately, and really it's the integrity of the person that's very important. And so you may guess if the book's free distribution book and the person's not making a big claim, that's probably a person of integrity. But it's not to say that commercial books aren't of integrity, just that's often the way that books have to get printed these days, and some very useful books are printed commercially. But as I said, ideally books are great, but more important is living beings, meeting living beings, and use the books as an occasional reminder, or studying. And then you've got to work out between what the book says, what works for you, and what people you trust, what the advice of people you trust. So you've got three sources. One, the text. Another source, people you respect and trust, what they say and do. Third source, what works for your own mind. When these three come together, you've probably got a pretty good guide. Words dharma with an R, and dhamma with an M refer to, are they same thing or what? Dharma is the Sanskrit, and Dhamma is the Pali. So Buddhism is primarily transmitted from the Indian source. It's an Indian-based religion, from either the Sanskrit language, which was the classical sacred language of India. And in that language, the word dharma with an R is used. But the Buddhist, or the Buddha, the original Buddhist texts, the original ones were done in Pali language, which was more vernacular. Not a classical sacred language, but a vernacular language. And the Buddha felt it was more appropriate to use a vernacular language because he was like, this is the people of the ordinary people. So he said, use the ordinary language. So a lot of the scriptures are written in Pali language. And it depends. So by and large, the Sanskrit was used when Buddhism became a little more literary, which was after 2nd century BC. It became more established and literary. So then they used Dharma to translate, because they wanted to make this going to be classical literature now. So they used Dharma. But the early texts are done in Pali, which uses Dhamma. Can we use the 5 indriyas to solve the 5 hindrances? Yes. In fact, they are the 5 hindrances are your sparring partners in cultivating the 5 indriya. Keep giving. If you don't cultivate the 5 indriya, a hindrance will sock you in the eye or punch you in the gut. So you've got to. Faith helps to doubt. Mindfulness supervises all of it. Energy gets rid of restlessness and dullness, balanced energy. Deep cultivation of all of them, samadhi liberates you from ill will. So all these, and wisdom, so all these mingle together, deal with the hindrances. Person experiencing a band of pain around the back when standing and sitting, they followed the band. It goes on and on around the body. Any suggestions how to work with it? Well, try to focus on an area of your body that's not in pain. And as you focus on it, get a feeling for what happens in your heart and mind. As you notice somewhere that's quite comfortable, what happens to your heart and mind? What's the kind of tonality of it? Probably quite open and relaxed, I would imagine. Now you move to the painful area, what happens to your heart? It starts to maybe get a bit tense, agitated. What can I do about this? Right? Now when you go back to the comfortable area, you don't go, oh, what should I do about this? How can I deal with this non-pain? My legs are in a lot of non-pain. How can I deal with it? Mind goes, oh, this is okay. And when we go to the painful area, oh, how can I deal with it? And is it possible to go to the painful area? Oh, this is a painful area, like this. And so just using it, just training the heart to remain constancy. And because naturally the reflex is to somehow get rid of the pain somewhere or another. But that puts a mental pressure onto the physical condition. And that mental pressure may be a contributory factor to why the pain doesn't dissolve, doesn't move on. Now, if it's a pain to do with, say, somatic or energetic imbalances, then it's very important the mind remains open, interested, sympathetic, but does not try to change things. So we're creating space, an empathic space, an empathetic space for conditions to arise and move on. So in that way we listen to the pain. What's it feel like? Is it angry pain? Is it sad pain? Is it fighting pain? Is it contracted pain? Is it, what's the tonality of it? What does it want to do? Widen your deepen your heart around that. Also contemplate, if you have a band running around your body, say, widen your attention from the painful area to include the non-painful area. So by that, you're in a way, by doing that, you are generating the potential for the pain, the energy of the pain to move, because you're keeping a wide focus. And practice, what is this pain going to teach me about equanimity and about openness and about compassion and investigation. And this is something we're going to be with for a lifetime, physical pain. And you're not going to get away from it. So, okay, let's do the learning. This one may go, but another one will come in its place. So what's the proper learning process? I would suggest that some pains will disappear, some will probably move very slowly, some will have a certain emotional condition. So a lot of, traumatic or emotional abuse is transferred to the body. Shock, grief, abuse on a physical or psychological basis is transferred to the body. The body retains those impressions. So sometimes when the pain is coming to the surface, it's a sign that these somatic bruises are coming up to the surface. And if we're patient and open and listen, they may very well express themselves and move on. But do also retain that fundamental stability, so you don't go into the painful area. You have a fundamental stable axis, I'm calling the spinal axis or the upright axis or your calm center, from which where you stand, if you like, place yourself, and then you open towards the discomfort with that quality of an open, inquiring, sympathetic mind, and see what emotions particularly will arise in that relationship. In terms of attachment, this is a term used in relation to childhood development, referring to a bond between parent and child. It has been shown that without a healthy attachment, a child can suffer and this can continue to adulthood. I also hear the term used in Buddhism where we're encouraged to not be attached. In adult healthy relationships, attachment is a term which comes up. As adults, how do we know when it is okay to have an attachment or not? Well, yeah, the English word here is being used in two different contexts. So in the first context, attachment referring to the necessary bond between parent and child, absolutely correct, because the child is not, just because the child has been born, the child is not actually separate yet, really. They're still part of the parents. Child doesn't have a separate psychology, it's still very much part of the parent. So it has to be, just like you don't cut your leg off, the child is part of the parent. It looks like it's separate, it's not. And it's not separate for several years, and it gradually separates. And then the child more or less decides for itself when it can move out into autonomy. So then the attachment is subsides, or is no longer of the same nature, and can be dissolved. And that's development theory and development wisdom. Now, you also hear this word attachment in Buddhism, but it's a different concept. So that's why because you're doing a translation of maybe one or two things. One is viveka, which means disengagement, which is a sense of keeping things in perspective. You're generally withdrawing your attention from unskillful objects. So in other words, you're not attached to sights and sounds. You can notice them, but you're able to gently withdraw your attention from them, so you can focus on what's important. Without that, we'd go crazy. So it's a different frame of reference, because you have a stable center. The idea of the parent-child relationship is this encourages the attachment there, encourages the little one to feel welcomed and steady and comfortable and okay and worthy, and therefore they, within that holding pattern, they begin to a center, their own center begins to develop in the right way. Now, with viveka, it's based upon the understanding that you have a center already, and you can return to it. And so, you let go because you've got something to return to. Because you have had some parental bonding, so it's enabled you to feel a center. Of course, for most people, the center is not complete. It's kind of frayed. It's not completely there all the time, but gradually you withdraw attention from what's unskillful and let yourself dwell in the skillful, and gradually your center will strengthen and build up. That's the fundamental bit. When I'm saying center, I could mean your composure, your heart, I don't know how else to put it really, but your like groundedness, inner stability. First it's partial, but then the more you cultivate, the inner stability becomes stronger, and you can let go of, sight, sounds, even physical discomfort. You can withdraw from, because you've got somewhere to go, and you feel very steady and comfortable. That's a different experience. See, because with the parental attachment thing, the child is completely, passive. The child doesn't decide to be attached or not. It's just that's the bond. But the idea is for the adult is when they have developed, they can determine, okay, now I have enough of that. This is not necessary. I withdraw from that. I'm no longer engaged with the television or the sport or the whatever. So it's very much decided and voluntary. There's an autonomous agent doing that for themselves. And so the other word attachment sometimes used is called upadana, or clinging. And clinging is a kind of almost a pathology of a mechanism that occurs when we don't feel stable. So we hang on, don't feel stable independently, therefore I hang on to my creature comforts, or I hang on to my phone or something, because I feel I need stimulation. I don't feel comfortable without stimulation. So there's a clinging, and clinging is a kind of mechanism that it's not a decision. And it's often giving a pretty useful readout on your instability. So, okay, I do feel I need a lot of this, that, and the other. That's clinging. Okay. No, noticing that I can't spend a day without watching television, as I feel really weird and uncomfortable and restless. I know I need to develop some strengths internally so I can withdraw from that. So rather than clinging being a kind of accusation, you shouldn't cling. You should stop clinging, which is like saying stop. Stop feeling uncomfortable with pain. It's just a natural feature. Yeah, but it's a wake-up call, because the sense is if you can't get through the day without watching television, can't get through the week without having a pint of beer or something, it's a very dependent condition. What's needed is maybe more comfort, more strength internally. So it encourages you to develop the strengths that enable you to disengage from conditions that essentially are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and limit you. So that's the Buddhist take on how this word is used in the Buddhist context. Yeah. We notice where the attachment is, where that reflex of clinging is, and it reminds us, this will go one day. Okay, what are you going to do about what is it? What do you need? Most of us need stability. Well, you're not going to find it in that. So let's cultivate practice for stability. We need warmth. We need food. We need nourishment of some kind. We need heart food. Yeah, we can only get so much from watching television. Yeah. So if you need it, develop it here so you don't need it out there. And that gives you, that means you really, really, really fully grow up as an autonomous being. But this is something that we are encouraged to undertake. So, it's not healthy or unhealthy. It's just the recognition of I'm not there yet. Something has to be completed before I can let that one go. Okay. This, of course, can be a very large topic, but that's enough of this Q&A session for today. So why don't you take a few minutes to freshen up, and we'll sit together for the last half an hour. time moving on, and we have another meeting in a couple of hours' time. So there's no bell now, but it's just, if you wish, just to come into the sense fields again. Finding your center within all this, sites and domestic apparatus and so on. Finding your still center within all this, very helpful for this kind of retreat. Within all this, all that's changeable, the still point, contemplate it with some sense of dispassion. If it brings up memories of gratitude, photographs of people you respect or meaningful, lovely, it's good. Make it your place. That acts like a supportive temple. Tomorrow morning I have to go to a recitation of the training rules, so I might be about 10 minutes late, or in other words, I'm not banking on being online much before 9:15 tomorrow morning, my time. So just let you know that, but I will be online this evening in a couple of hours' time.